Good morning, everyone. We are continuing here as we for the uh, part that is the linguistic stage. Actually, this is an example for deconstruction, which we stopped at the second stage. We completed the explanation of the first two stages, that's verbal and textual. Verbal and textual stages. How a text, when it is at hand, how you can go for the uh, analysis or deconstruction as such at the first two stages, like verbal. You are looking at the, you are going to look at, you in at verbal stage you try to look at the contradictions and paradoxes in a text. Hmm? Yes. And the second stage, the same form we saw at the textual stage, how it evaluates the text for deconstruction procedure. Like you are looking at the whole text, the complete text as such, hmm? And complete text as such plus the line by line reading. Instead you are looking at the whole of the text to see how many they see the tone, the shifting pattern, or the viewpoint tenses, how we can see the complete deconstruction at a stretch instead of concentrating on one or two lines, unlike at the first stage. Now we are at the linguistic stage, and we will see which all features of a text or narrative you are using as a deconstructionist critique you are going to use at this linguistic stage. Okay, anyway, in the beginning I'm not going to read line by line, but we'll get you the points. Hope you are uh, familiar with the poem now. That is again the refusal to mourn the death of the child by fire in London. And even we stopped at the argument that why he doesn't tell us he is unwilling to mourn. It's just a child. And still he says that he's refusing to mourn. And that is a kind of omission. That also is pointed out as part of the verbal stage. Hope you can recollect that textual stage. Verbal stage first, then textual stage, that omissions and all also get mentioned at the second stage, that is the textual stage. But because once you finish off reading a poem or any narrative, a story, whatever, whichever brand it may be, whichever literary work it may be, text it may be, you will get the omissions, you will find out the omissions, all those only after reading the complete text as such. That's why it comes under textual stage, omission. Obviously, the refusal to mourn is mentioned, but he doesn't give us the reason why he is refusing to mourn the death of a child. Okay, and with that we closed our discussion on textual stage, at the textual stage. Now we have to look at the linguistic stage, the third type of deconstruction, or how to, which all points, which all features we have to analyze at this linguistic stage. Okay, yes. So looking for moments in the poem when the adequacy of language itself is as a medium of communication is called into question. That is, it was looking for moments in the poem when adequacy of language, we actually deconstruction, the process as such is trying to talk about, or post-structuralism as such wants to emphasize the inadequacy of language. What do you mean by inadequacy? Missing something, missing some features, missing something which we expect to get out of that. That is the way inadequacy, missing something. So, but adequacy of language is at question means they are trying to point out the inadequacy of language. We know how language can fail us. How we try to communicate something that can be taken in an entirely different manner by some others. Even though the structuralist critic or structuralist, they do not agree with that. But we know now how, with the numerous examples given by post-structuralism, at least if you want to be a post-structuralist or if you want to support post-structuralism, we can look into the exam, look at the examples given by them. So that adequacy, the problem of adequacy of language itself is a medium of, as a medium of communication is called into question. That is, they try to discuss the inadequacy of language in that form because they are deconstructing the form which is at hand. This is an example for just one form and the deconstruction, how we can go for the deconstructed reading. Okay, so medium of communication. We expect a medium of communication never to fail or to be very reliable. But here we will see with a lot of examples or at least a few examples in the text that we are analyzing how the adequacy of language is at stake or the inadequacy of language can be proven. Okay, such moments occur when, for example, okay, here there is an implicit or explicit reference to the unreliability or untrustworthiness of language. See, it is very directly told, unreliability or untrustworthiness of language. We can definitely see that. It may involve, for instance, saying that something is unsayable. Just see, saying that something is unsayable. Very, very prominent an example. This is not even you can take very simple examples from your own daily life. Sometimes our parents say, you should not tell that. It's taboo. Sometimes we talk about taboos or some abusive terms. But how will you say that you should not say that? For instructing that, you have to say it first. So already the person who says that you should not say something has to say that in the very beginning or as part of the instruction. So saying something is unsayable itself is very problematic. So language is failing you or language is showing its untrustworthiness. Hope that point is clear. A person who instructs you, say for example, your parent says that it's a problematic term, you should not say. Which is the term that is problematic? To make you understand that or to make you aware of that, the person who is instructing you will have to pronounce it first. So already the person has uttered the word. It's problematic. So that is again a contradictory way of approaching language or using language. Saying that something is unsayable. ഒരു കാര്യം പറയാൻ പറ്റില്ല എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ ഓൾറെഡി പറയാൻ പറ്റുന്നതുകൊണ്ടല്ലേ പറയുന്നത്. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ടാബു വേർഡ് നിങ്ങൾ പറയരുത് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ വാട്ട് ഈസ് ഹാപ്പനിങ് ദർ? ആദ്യം ആ വേർഡ് പറയണം. അപ്പൊ അത് സേബിൾ ആയില്ലേ? So unsayable എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, let's say you're contradicting your own argument point. That's the idea I gave you. So how this provision, this particular instance, if you can note down in this form, it is part of the linguistic stage analysis of or linguistic way of deconstructing the text. Let us see if such an example occurs in the form of saying that it is impossible to utter or describe something and then doing so. Saying that it is impossible to describe or utter something and then doing so. It's impossible to utter this word or that word. In the very beginning you are uttering that and then you are trying to say with the same language, same way, it's unsayable or it cannot be uttered. You just think about the insensibility. But we do not actually take those into account in casual conversations. That's why this brain work is very necessary in deconstruction. Okay? Or saying that language inflates or deflates. Saying that language inflates or deflates. Or misrepresents its object. See, object. See, it leads us to confusion. That's it. Inflates, deflates. That's moving away from its argument point. Very casually, if you take, that is the way. Misrepresenting something, its object. Okay, you try to say that something is unsayable. And in the very beginning, you have to say, you have to utter. There itself, it's a kind of misrepresentation of thing, misrepresentation of fact. And that is the point which language is at stake. The reliability of language is at stake. So main argument point in any deconstructive idea itself is the unreliability of language. unlike the structuralist point of view that says about language is highly valuable, it's very reliable, you don't have to be worried about using it at any point of your life, okay, or communication, and then continuing to use it anyway. Again, just think about talking about the language, its unreliability. Still, what do you do? See, even deconstructionist point of view, if you take, they are using the same language to talk about its negatives. So they are also doing the same, and then continue to use it anyway. I will tell you one more point. Reading against the grain, reading the text against its grain. Once you say so, once you say that, you are in one way or other indirectly or admitting that the text has a grain. And if you have to get that idea very clearly, well, I will get you a very casual example again. Okay, I'm not even worried about ghosts. First person says so. I am not even worried about ghosts. See, a person says that I do not believe in all these things. I'm not worried about ghosts and all. All the time he or she asserts that. But the problem is, എനിക്ക് പ്രേതത്തിനെ വരെ പേടിയില്ല എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോഴും when the person says so, in one way or other, the person means it is something to be worried, but still I am very courageous so that I am not worried. So at one point there is a no or due respect already allotted to the concept of ghost. Ghost. And that person, for the sake of his or her own convenience or assertion, says that or declares that I'm not even worried about ghosts. But already in that, the respect or the importance of such an idea is communicated. So this is the way you're continuing to use something which you do not you do not admit about the existence of or something. So this is the points at which, these are the points where we contradict our own selves, our own words, our own ideas without being aware of it too much. Okay, so that language is very unreliable. That's what they would like to assert, this deconstructionist or the poststructuralism in general. Next, in a refusal to mourn, for instance, the whole poem does what it says it won't do. The whole poem, it's the very existence of the poem is a question. Why? The whole poem does what it says it won't do. What is the title of the poem? It's a refusal to mourn. The poet, in the very outset, he states that I refuse to mourn the death of the child. The speaker professes his refusal to mourn. That's the argument point of the poem. But the poem itself constitutes an act of mourning. But just think, the poem, very existence of the poem is an act of mourning. See, you know how elegy and all are there as certain type of poetry which really holds the purpose or takes the purpose of mourning the death of someone. And here the whole poem looks like the event on the, or at least at some points it talks about the death of the child, and the very existence itself talks about the act of mourning. But he tries to say that I refuse to mourn the death of the child. Well, he contradicts his own statement. The very poem, the very existence of the poem contradicts the statement or the argument point in the mode of its title. The title argues. The title is very important actually. But after deconstructionist thoughts and all, we know for sure we cannot curtail the whole poem just in one title. Sometimes the title may be something and the entire poem talks about something entirely different things. Actually, we are not, even though in traditional sense we are not supposed to do, but that traditionalism, that very fixed notions of these narratives, all those are out of question after the post-structuralist events like post-structuralist advent, and even with postmodernism we will come across later. Then in the third stanza, see, these points they take not from the first stanza, but in the third stanza, the speaker says that he will not murder the mankind of foregoing with a grave truth. See, one line is taken from the poem and says, he will not murder the mankind of foregoing with a grave truth. That's to be analyzed at a very great length. He will not murder the mankind of foregoing with a grave truth. This line actually says about the very acceptance of death or the inevitability of death. That is, I will not murder the mankind. That's everyone is supposed to be dead. Everyone should die. So that is a grave truth. There is no point in your mourning or in, as a whole, that is to be accepted at great length. So I will not murder the mankind of her going with a grave truth. Just by mourning, I'm not going to murder the whole universe, or the whole living beings. You take that grave truth for granted. So that I do not want to make unlikely hue and cry at the event of death. This is the way it looks like. Okay, this condemns all the accepted ways of speaking about this event. In that way, condemns means you hate, a person hates that all accepted ways of speaking about this event. In the sense, sometimes we might have come across, always we say it is a comic event, like a person who lived after the death of the person. We have the tendency to have a very official or formal gathering, and persons coming to talk about the person, and the everything uttered, every word, every sentence is in respect to the person who is deceased. When the person was alive, none talked something in positive, as a respectful thing about it. Sometimes you can just think about the person who was not really good, person who is very stingy, very kind of miser, maybe a kind of cruel, with bias on the grounds of religion or whatever, politics, whatever it may be, and actually villagers of the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood, none of them liked the person. But what happens after the death? Everyone is coming to pay respect in the mode of some words, some other speech and all. This is the way, the accepted ways of speaking about the event. After death, no one should speak something against them. This is the tacit understanding that we have been going on with till date. We always insist upon that. Should not tell like that about a person who is dead. What about while the person is alive? That's why Madhavi sang in that way. മരിച്ചതിന് ശേഷം എനിക്ക് പൂക്കൾ അർപ്പിച്ചിട്ട് എന്ത് കാര്യം, എനിക്ക് സ്നേഹം കിട്ടുന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ എന്താണ് ഞാൻ ജീവിച്ചിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ കിട്ടണം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ടുണ്ട്. Not just in the case of love, but in every case, like respect, whatever a human being wants or prefers. After death, we don't know what is it, whether your flowers, your bouquet, whatever you pay as due respect after the death of a person, the good words and all, the consoling words, the good words, nothing is going to be available to him or her. But there is an accepted way of speaking about that event of death. Every time we all have the tendency to, even though we keep in mind that it was not that good a person, but still it's a kind of courtesy to to move with the current, so that other persons talk about the deliver a very better speech. So how should I mention something very negative? This is the way everyone follows that accepted way of speaking about this event, that is death. And the poet professes to stand outside the available range of cliched elegiac stanzas or discursive practices. That is it, discursive practices. It's a cliched way to talk about a person whom you didn't care, or who you didn't concern, whom you didn't extend any concern. Just for a formality's sake, you deliver a very elaborate elegiac speech in due respect to the same. But that is a very cliched stance, and the speaker, once he says, or the poet, once he says, I will not murder the mankind of her, going with a grave truth. Why should I make such a hue and cry, or why should I stick on to such accepted ways of mourning? So that I would like to stand out, that is outside, standing outside, he would like to stand outside, as if he says, as if he would like to stand outside the available range of cliched, elegiacs, and discursive practices. It's a discursive practice as far as he is concerned, should be read. As if some pure stands beyond these necessarily compromised forms of utterance were possible. When he says so, we may expect him to give another way of mourning, or another decent way, something to pure stands beyond this necessarily compromised. It's a compromise that you say something which is not in your concern, which is not in your conviction, in your acceptance level. You never liked the person. Just say, for example, you didn't like the person, but still you try to utter something for the sake of sticking on to or going with the mob, where you are not taking a pure stand, but which is really spoiled. You say something which is not there in your mind, which is not part of your personality, which is not part of your thought, which is not part of your passion. Still, so that when this person says that I will not do that, I am not going to mourn for this death, because maybe he doesn't like the child, we do not know. That's an omission which is already pointed out at the textual stage. So again, we expect this person to give some pure stance beyond this necessarily compromised utterance where possible. Is it possible for you to give a very decent and pure way of talking about the event of death? He says that I would like to, okay, just think about the way people talk about giving up plastic bags. All of a sudden, everyone stops using plastic bags. So that for all different purposes, we did have the tendency to use it anywhere and everywhere. But when it becomes inconvenient, is you are not provided with an alternative. Hope you get the idea. Okay, at home you can go with a bottle bowl to purchase, to bring fish. It's fine. But the difficulty starts coming when you have to travel long distance, you have to purchase a lot, and all of a sudden you are not with something to carry. And even the alternative they provided was very expensive. You know, the starting time of the giving up of plastic covers. But if you are having an alternative, like we have green bags and all, I don't know whether that's a bio-renewable, certain alternatives came, but not in a very successful manner. Still, once everyone starts giving it up, we try to contribute to the society in our own way. At least we have studied environmental science and all, so we try to accept or to try to assess the importance of that. So we also try to give up it maximum for the sake of our environment. But the alternative, without alternative, all of a sudden there is nothing as an alternative. There is nothing as an alternative. What we should do, as it has become too much of our daily life. In the same way here, just think about such a situation or anything which we have been using. We have been. I just gave you this example because this kind of a practice or the concept got introduced, and people. Some people were cooperating, some people didn't cooperate. Certain shops try to hide. Even now they try to hide the plastic covers, and even still they are going on giving, but not in the mode of printing their names and all. That's the only difference that came, I think. So in the direct way, they do not give. That's all. Okay, but that is still going on. Yes. So yet this is followed not by silence but by the solemn quasi-liturgical pronouncements of the final stanza. Deep with the first dead lies London's daughter. The speaker proclaims, which sounds very like traditional panergical oratory, with the dead person transformed into some larger than life heroic figure, becoming London's daughter. An impossible designation for her in life. Just think about this. This is, uh, yeah, a refusal to mourn. He already declared in the very outset beginning of the poem itself. But actually, the problem is at the last stage, last stanza, he says, deep with the first death lies London's daughter. It's even like proclaiming the dead person's just a child, but person transformed into some larger than life heroic figure. It's like it has become part and parcel of London. And he, in the beginning, when he says, I refuse to mourn the death of the child by fire, it's as if not giving any importance to the child. I do not even care about the death. That's the sense that is provided there. But then becoming London's daughter, that is the whole nation is at loss with the passing away of the child. Maybe that is an impossible designation for her in life, because it's just a child, and it didn't contribute anything in the mode of to become the country's greatest as a national figure, nothing as such. So robbed us for some great procession of the dead of all the ages, and now reunited with the Mother Earth in the form of the London clay in which she is now buried. All these sound like exaggerations, because it's about a child, and now he tries to impose all the kind of greatness or great importance, everything on the child, without talking about that reason as well. Whether the child is from, but even that can be read in a different way. I will tell my reading later, because I do not want to confuse. See, what is the reconstruction happening here? A child which didn't have time even to contribute anything for the nation, being declared as one of the great figures of the nation, national figure, so that its death itself is an event. But even then, the writer is trying to refusing to mourn as well. But that is again London's daughter, becoming London's daughter. How it is possible? As if to become the national leader and all, you have to. That is the traditional basis notion, traditional idea. Why we are never given any such designations. Like Mahatma Gandhi is the father of our nation, and you say that. Why? Person number A or B or C is not that. That is the question. To be part of the national symbolism, to be a national symbol of something like greatness and all, you have to contribute something to the nation. What about this child? It didn't have time because it is dead at the infancy, a stage of infancy itself, because child refused to mourn the death of the child, not a woman or a man or a boy, or not even a boy or a girl. So how it is possible? That is another question left out. Okay, and even after he's talking about this event, at the end we feel like when you're reunited with the Mother Earth in the form of the London clay, because it is part of London clay now. That much prominence. And what does this poem say in the very beginning? It's refusing to mourn. And it's about giving importance, giving so like an elegy or praising the dead. Everything is happening at the end of the session, end of the poem as well. In this poem, we might say Thomas identifies, who is this Thomas? Dylan Thomas, the writer. Thomas identifies the language trap. The language trap. That is it. Every time deconstruction wants to point out this language trap and then falls into it. He, at the very beginning, he tries to identify the language trap, but he himself falls prey to that. That's how we find out the loopholes, the mistakes. The writer wants to or tries to say something, tries to profess, express some way, something different, but again, he or she is back to the normal practice of mourning. Unknowingly, he is mourning. The very existence of the poem is an act of mourning. There itself, the whole statement, the whole argument fails. Look again at the poem with this textual level in mind. The texture. Now, just come back to the textual level, the whole poem. That's what I mean by textual level at surface plane. The textual level in mind. Are there other examples of Thomas being forced to use the rhetorical strategies he has just exposed? The rhetorical strategies means your skill in orator, your skill in speech, and the rhetorical strategies he has just exposed. You might start by looking at this, his use of the word mother and daughter. See, let us see this. Mother and daughter. These two words, you just look at these two words. I'm thinking about the nature of the metaphorical family implied by these words. Familial system, the mother-daughter relationships, all those implied by these words. Other metaphorical constructs to look at are those entailed in the word murder and in the notion of unmourning tales. See, the writer in the title, with the title we feel like this person is taking a different stand. He is very audaciously, with much courage, he says that I refuse to mourn the death of the child. Okay, and we feel him to be very courageous or in one way or other very different from others. So that very frankly he says that, the speaker says that I refuse to mourn. Okay, what's wrong with that? The title looks like that. But at the end, where it all ends, as we talk about our women empowerment movies and all, nowadays, just at a surface level, you see everything to be oriented towards their empowerment, their upheaval. See, the very strong woman character, at least they are coming out as something very prominent, very empowered, courageous. But there are real nuances, the real problems in the portrayal. If you look into look into details, or at least in a very deeper way, deeper level. That's why I gave you the example of that movie. How old are you? At the end, it's almost like failing the whole argument of the poem. Again, the woman is sticking on to the passion for or the desire to achieve the appreciation of just one man, her own husband, the very traditional concept. Not in the her own achievement of this trait. She says that she is valuing or the most beautiful moment of her life. She declares to be the moment that he holds her hand tight. The whole argument point of the poem is at stake. Sorry, the movie is at stake. In the same way, here, when the writer says at the beginning with the title he is refusing to mourn the death of the child, we expect him to be very different out of all the constraints of the constructions and conventions. But what happens at the end? He's again back to the conventional ideas of mother-daughter relationship, metaphorical family, and even the act of mourning. Other metaphorical constructs to look at are those entailed in the word murder and unmourning. The other metaphorical constructs, the ideas which are too much fixed in us. Whenever and wherever one tries to go beyond that, the drawn circles, still the society or even our own conditioning makes us come back to be part and parcel of that. Okay, to look at are those entailed in the word murder and in the notion of unmourning murder. It's almost like murder. It's again, you are giving importance to death. He says that it's a universal event. So why are you worried? You should accept that as such. But still, he's concerned about that end, that closing. That's why he is giving importance. Unmourning themes. The theme is not mourning. What's wrong with that? If he takes such a stand about unmourning, refusing to mourn, themes is not mourning. So that there is a kind of contradicting his own stand. Okay, yes. Once the grain of the poem is opened, up, then it cannot long survive the deconstructive pressures brought to bear upon it. Once the grain of the poem is opened up, you are trying to find out the grain, or you are teasing out that major things. So no longer the poem or any narrative, any writing can no longer can survive the deconstructive pressures. Every time it is under the pressure and threat of deconstruction, you will find out the loopholes like all these. The very surface plane, you feel like the writers or the directors are trying to take a very audacious stand, like going against the norms, the conventions, the existing practices. But what at the end, sometimes, or at least at many points, they fail themselves because these the conditionings are not that easy to be removed out of our conscious. Okay, conscious. So brought up, bear upon. See, the text cannot bear that deconstructive pressure. It teases out all these loopholes and reveals itself as fractured, contradictory, and symptomatic of cultural and linguistic malaise. All these will be taken out and thrown in front of the reading public. It will be available to the public to give more and more. A three-step model like this will lend itself to application to the other material. That is just one form, how at three different stages you find out, okay, contradictions and paradoxes. If you are taking at the moving the poem or trying to deconstruct the poem at a verbal stage, and then the whole poem, to look at the whole poem to find out certain inconsistencies and other features at the second stage, that is textual stage, and the third one, the linguistic stage, like all these linguistic malaise, like the semantic or other difficulties, all this you are teasing out of the text. You are not trying to assert the unity of the text, but the disunity, how fractured it is, how the writer fails himself or herself in stating something, meaning something, but communicating something entirely different. How contradictory the person can be in talking something, some idea, and giving some entirely different evaluation of the same. Even certain stanzas, how the stanzas of same poem can be contradictory to one another. Okay, and symptomatic of a cultural and linguistic malaise. It's about culture based because all those are imbibed by the person. A person who is writing, a person who is directing a movie, they have been part and parcel of this society. So to think differently without making any loophole, to act differently without having any loophole is very difficult. Okay, and three-step model like this will lend itself to applications to other material. This is one example given by this text. It gives this approach something distinctive as a critical practice. Critical practice, very distinctive as a critical practice, and lays the strengths and weakness of deconstruction open to scrutiny. Even in that, we can find out some loopholes, some problems. I will tell you one reading I wanted to get on my part when he says that the national figures are only that is the idea though. Why this child is given that kind of a prominence by the assertion that London's daughter, because it didn't contribute or it didn't get time to contribute anything for the society or the nation in general. But just think, it's being an oversoul, it's being a very innocent child without doing any harm to the society. Just think about the politicians, just think about the other people, diplomatic people, grown up, rich, with maximum political and maximum power at their hand. What are they doing? Just think about the elegy written in a country churchyard, where the poem talks about the innocent people who who work hard to earn their daily livelihood, like early, see, everyday bread. They are not doing any harm to the society. That's what, see, in Grace poem you can see that assertion. In that sense, in that regard, the child is to be the most eminent national leader, national figure, because it didn't do it didn't involve itself in the corruption, in the cruelties, in the murders, in the political riots. Nothing. It got birth, it went away. In that sense, it contributes to the nation. But there the traditional notion, as the writer sticks on to the traditional notion, that to be the prominent figure of a nation, you have to contribute something in the mode of your uh, political stand or some other contributions in academics to its economy, its intelligentsia. So these are very traditional concepts. And again, this person who is willing to, who wants himself to assert or to go against the fixed notions, is coming back to the same level when he says that becoming London's daughter is too much of an exaggeration. But another possibility is there in the mode that that innocence itself is the most beautiful, most valuable contribution to be a national figure. Okay, that is my idea. That's a scrutiny. It's about a scrutiny. Even of deconstruction is open to scrutiny. It's my reading. If you want, you can contradict that statement even. No, a child who gets birth and dies at the age of 2 or 3, it didn't contribute anything. It cannot be taken as a very prominent national figure. It can be an argument. That is up to your reading, up to your way of thinking. In my way, when I connect it with the Grace poem, it can be like this as well. That's all. Okay. And the deconstructive reading then aims to produce disunity, to show that what had looked like unity and coherence actually contains contradictions and conflicts which the text cannot stabilize and contain. It's mainly about finding out or expressing to take or assert the disunity to show that what had looked like unity, till date, till in the traditional reading, and coherent unity and coherence no longer available, because we are trying to find out the loopholes. We are bringing those incoherence into the forefront in every different reading. So actually it contains contradictions and conflicts. In green, after deconstruction, it should be contradictions and conflicts, which the text cannot stabilize. Actually, nowhere you can stabilize this. And no longer that is preferable also and contain. Completely, you cannot curtail a text as such in that way. Now, we might characterize it as waking up the sleeping. It's very beautiful metaphor. We might characterize it as waking up the sleeping dogs of signification, very important, and setting them on each other. Just think about this situation. The disunifying elements are already there, the contradictory elements are already there in the form, but they are almost like sleeping dogs. But what a deconstructionist writer, what does he do or she do? What does she or he do? They are waking the sleeping dogs of signification and setting them on each other. They make them start fighting so that the complete unity, the assumed unity is completely at stake. Okay, so this is the way you talk about the problem or the way the disunity of the text is revealed as such. Okay. Yes. Now, in contrast, more conventional styles of close reading had the opposite aim. Actually, close reading is connected with what? You can make it in a different color. That's why. It's new criticism, the close reading. Obviously, they also find out these elements because they are closely reading. The disunifying elements they note down. But the difference is they would take a text which appeared fragmented and disunified and demonstrate an underlying unity. They, even after they find it out, they try again and again to assert that no, it's not that problematic. It can be taken as a unified thing. They do not want that disunity to be revealed or part and parcel of their interpretations. They shut the eyes in. It's almost like shutting the eyes in front of the reality. That is the difference in neocritical explication they text, close reading, and deconstructionist approach towards the text. Both of them find out the disunities because both of them analyze the text very closely well. Explication, the text is an idea of deconstruction, neocriticism itself, not even that of deconstruction. Even before that, this close reading, giving maximum importance to text, came into being, got introduced. But the difference is, one aims to show the disunity, but the other one aims to show the unity. Even after finding out the elements, the problems, they try to make like, oh, it's okay. We don't have to project that as part of our interpretation. So aiming to separate the metaphor for them is aiming to separate the warring dogs and soothe them back to sleep with the suitable blandishments. A lot of arguments they make to show the kind of unity which is not actually there. Their aim is to separate the warring dogs of signification, warring dogs, and soothe them back to sleep. One is trying to set them for war or kind of fight, but the other one, new criticism, if you are a new critical reader, you try to set them back to sleep. Don't go and fight. Okay, your disunity, your problems inside out is fine, visible, but you just go back to sleep. The other one is even the sleeping dogs are woken up and set to fight each other or one another. This is the difference. Okay, yeah, the two methods. Yeah, the two methods far apart through they would see themselves as being suffer from exactly the same drawbacks. It's a kind of drawback. Same drawbacks, which is that both tend to make all poems seem similar. Both tend to make all poems seem similar. The close reader detects miracles of poised ambiguity alike in Donne's complex metaphysical lyrics and simple poems like Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Title of the poem should be in capitals. Yes. So this is about every text is approached in the same way. Whatever the aim may be, this is about a close reading, every line by line analysis. So they approach every text in the same way of close reading, close analysis. Okay, some problems are there with this. Even in that case, we miss something. Something maybe some literary quality we leave out. We cannot predict. It depends on every poem, every writer, every writing. That's all. Which receive the full scale explicatory treatment of the 10 or 20 page article. Full scale, which receive the full scale explicatory treatment. It's almost like an explication. A lot of arguments, a lot of interpretations on the same or different writings. You have a lot and lot to write because every line is analyzed, every passage is analyzed, scrutinized, scanning, so that the experience of reading them loses all its particularity. That's it. Beyond all these, see, new criticism is one approach, deconstruction is one approach, but what about the beauty of reading, the experience of reading? So that the experience of reading them loses all its particularity, literariness, the quality of the greatest quality of literature is at stake. You fail to experience the joy of reading. Maybe if you go for this kind of a scrutiny, you miss out something which is priceless. Okay. Similarly, after the deconstructionist treatment, all poems tend to emerge as angst-ridden, fissured enchantments of linguistic and other forms of indeterminacy. Angst-ridden, fissured enactments of linguistic and other forms of indeterminacy. After that, what happens? You feel that everything is indetermined. It's like fissured, and it's very problematic. At the end of there is chance that you feel like, oh, this is something very challenging. This is not that. This is we have at the end, at least we have the kind of anguish, a kind of sadness that everything is disunified, everything is fissured and all. Sometimes this is possible. Some people are happy about the kind of disunity to get reveal the disunity, to get it at hand or to find it out thereon, but certain points are that at least at times we feel like it's fissured enactments, everything is fissured. So almost every poem is a wasteland. Okay, and I will comment further on some of the characteristics listed on the post-structuralist side on the diagram on page 72. It's about the last diagram, he says. Next poem we will discuss again another example also is the only in the next class we will deal with. We will see the three stages in the same way we analyzed Dylan Thomas poem. The next one is the Castaway by William Cowper. We will deal with that only after the examination, the next class. Thank you so much for listening.